My colleagues are delayed, but we want to be respectful of your time. Your testimony will be a part of the permanent record, of course, and so we want to begin. The Tactical Air and Land Forces Subcommittee meets today to receive testimony on Marine Corps Ground Force Acquisition and Modernization programs. We welcome our distinguished panel of witnesses: Brigadier General Frank Kelly, Commander of Marine Corps Systems Command; Brigadier General Daniel O'Donoghue, Director, Capabilities Development Directorate, Combat Development and Integration; Mr. William Taylor, Program Executive Officer, Land System, U.S. Marine Corps. Of the estimated 210,000 military service personnel deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan, approximately 130,000 are in Afghanistan, and out of this number, 21,000 are Marines. More than 6,200 Americans have given their lives, and more than 46,000 have been wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan since September 11, 2001. This is the fourth in a series of hearings the subcommittee is holding for the purpose of updating our members on the budget request for fiscal year 2012 and to help better understand the potential impact of the Budget Control Act of 2011 on our military capability and deployed forces. The ultimate impact of the Budget Control Act on DoD funding next year and over the next 10 years remains a major concern of this subcommittee. As I have stated before, major reductions in the federal budget need to be a major element of correcting the federal deficit. The Department of Defense must share in a fair and balanced way in those reductions, and that process is already taking place under the Budget Control Act of 2011, with nearly $500 billion in cuts planned for DoD over the next 10 years. If the administration had first reconsidered the national military strategy based on the likely resources to be available, the changes that are having to be made by DoD and acquisition programs could be better justified. But it appears we will only have a new national military strategy after the fact. Under the sequestration provision of the Budget Control Act, up to a total of $1 trillion over 10 years could be possible under what Secretary Panetta has called the doomsday mechanism. As recently as this week, Secretary Panetta indicated that such a reduction would be, and I quote, devastating for the department. Secretary Panetta has further indicated a $1 trillion reduction possible under the Budget Control Act sequestration provision would amount to 23% if the President exercised the authority to exempt military personnel. Under current law, the reduction would have to be applied equally to each major investment and construction program, and I'm not sure how you build 3/4 of an aircraft carrier. Finally, the Secretary noted that between 2013, quote, cuts under maximum sequestration would equal about $100 billion a year compared with the FY 2012 plan. We would have the smallest ground force since 1940, the smallest number of ships since 1915, and the smallest air force in history. The threat to our national security would not be reduced. We would have to formulate a new security strategy that accepted substantial risk of not meeting defense needs. This ends his quote. Today we will significantly address Marine Corps Ground Force Acquisition and Modernization programs. In order to perform their missions, whether home or abroad, these Marines must be adequately equipped with the right gear to maximize their combat effectiveness and provide for their best protection possible. We cannot lose focus of this objective. The subcommittee expects to receive an update from the witnesses as to what changes may have to be made in their proposed acquisition programs in fiscal year 2012. We would like to know the views of our witnesses on what the potential impacts of Marine Corps capabilities are, particularly in light of the possible reductions in the Marine Corps procurement and R&D budgets over the next 10 years. We also hope to gain a better understanding from our witnesses on how potential funding reductions would be apportioned for their programs and how these funding reductions could potentially impact Marine Corps modernization programs and the approximately 21,000 Marines currently serving in Afghanistan. One major concern is understanding the potential impact of budget changes on the affordability of the Marine Corps' ground combat and tactical vehicle modernization strategy. The subcommittee expects to gain a better understanding of the processes being used by the Marine Corps in determining what is good enough in terms of their combat and tactical vehicle portfolios, given the austere fiscal environment projected for the next 10 years. What metrics are the Marines using to determine how much modernization is needed for the combat tactical force fleets, and will the Marine Corps ultimately be able to afford its currently projected ground vehicle modernization strategy? I would like to now turn to my good friend on the Democrat side to see if he has an opening statement or comments.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. No real opening comments, as don't want to take up too much time. I want to get to the witnesses' testimony. But you know, as we all sit here, obviously, sequestration and what next year's budgets and what we're going to be facing are certainly top priority to us, and we're anxious to hear your testimony on the strategy going forward. We had a hearing with the service chiefs over a couple of weeks ago, and still talking about working through the cuts to the budget from the CR from earlier this year without a plan for what's going to happen if we hit sequestration or certain budgets looking forward. So we have some major issues that we have to face, but appreciate the opportunity, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. I ask unanimous consent that non-subcommittee members, if any, be allowed to participate in today's hearing after all subcommittee members have had an opportunity to ask questions. Is there objection? Hearing none, non-subcommittee members will be recognized at the appropriate time for 5 minutes. We will proceed with the panel's testimony and then go to questions. Without objection, all witnesses' prepared statements will be included in the hearing record. General Donahue, please proceed with your opening remarks.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Bartlett, Congressman Kritz, and distinguished members of the panel, it is an honor to be here. On behalf of all Marines, their families, and this team before you, thank you for your extraordinary support. This will be the one opening statement for the team here, and then we'll proceed to questions, sir. The Marine Corps is the nation's expeditionary force in readiness. As such, we are prepared for all manner of crises, ensure access for the joint force and interagency, and, by being ready, mitigate national risks during a period of fiscal retrenchment. 10 years ago today, under circumstances no one predicted, 4,400 Marines and 6 amphibious ships were assembling to strike al-Qaeda after the horrific acts of 9/11. On short notice, they rapidly concentrated from globally dispersed forward engagement missions to attack hundreds of miles from the Arabian Sea to Kandahar and on to Kabul. No other force had the required readiness, strategic mobility, and self-sustainment to respond so quickly and decisively. Their tactical mobility extended the operating area beyond the enemy's capacity to cope. This dynamic ability, at a moment's notice, to shape, deter, defeat, and deny our enemy's sanctuary is emblematic of the crisis response capabilities that we continue to develop in the current and future force. Our unequivocal top priority is supporting our 21,000 Marines and sailors fighting in Afghanistan and 10,000 more that are forward deployed worldwide. With the continuing support of Congress and a rapid fielding process, our Marines in combat are well equipped for the current fight, even as the enemy adapts. At the same time, in stride, we are transitioning to our role as the post-OEF expeditionary force in readiness. In doing so, we will accept risk in extended ground operations and reshape the Marine Corps for scalable crisis response missions such as counterterrorism, counterproliferation, disaster relief, rescuing Americans, prioritized security cooperation and major contingency operations, and reinforcing our allies. While still globally responsive, we will rebalance our force posture back to the Pacific as we withdraw from OEF. Our judicious modernization strategy supports this force while recognizing fiscal constraints. Our spare budget focuses only on what is good enough and what is absolutely required. The Marine Corps' entire budget, to include supporting Navy accounts, is only 7.8% of DOD's. Our modernization priorities are the Joint Strike Fighter and MV-22, an affordable amphibious combat vehicle, a balanced ground combat and tactical vehicle portfolio to include the JLTV, and Navy amphibious ships. This testimony addresses ground force modernization, which is 14% of our budget and just 0.6% of DOD's. Our ground procurement account is approximately $2 billion a year. Fiscal constraints on a relatively small ground modernization can have a disproportionate impact. Our top ground priority is the amphibious combat vehicle. A JLTV addresses shortfalls for select light combat vehicles which perform our most demanding missions. For our entire portfolio, and especially the amphibious combat vehicle and JLTV, the Marine Corps, working with the Department of Navy, has taken an aggressive and innovative approach distinguished by integrating mature technology, stressing affordability as a key performance parameter, conducting comprehensive system engineering and cost analysis, creating a transparent and open dialogue with industry, OSD, and Congress, employing a streamlined acquisition process with an emphasis on competition, and most importantly, at inception, creating an integrated requirements and acquisition team that makes cost-informed trades and requirements. The acquisition requirements team testifying before you today works together daily and at every step. We're completely integrated, and we ensure best value for the nation for essential capability. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. General, I understand that you have the only oral testimony, that all three of you are available for questions. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. As is my usual practice, I will reserve my questions until the other panel members, including our guest panelists, have had an opportunity to ask their questions, hoping that my questions will have been asked by the other panel members. So I turn now to Mr. Kritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General O'Donohue, General Kelly, and Mr. Taylor, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your service to our country. I actually have just a couple of quick questions, and then I'll allow other members to talk. I'm heartened by the strategy that the Marine Corps is working with the Army on the JLTV program to try to move that quicker and come to a resolution. And it brings up an issue, is that there's the remote weapons station that sits on top of a lot of Army vehicles is something that the Marine Corps hasn't really looked at in the same way. And I'm just curious as to, as you move forward, the CROWS is called on the Stryker vehicles, it's on the Humvees, and I'm wondering, because of all the technology advancements that have been made because of the Army's use of it, if the Marine Corps is looking at the CROWS as being part of any system that they go forward on their ground vehicles.
Excuse me, they have not provided us with the world's best microphones. If you could hold those very close to your mouth, we will hear you better. Thank you.
Sir, from the requirements perspective, particularly for the amphibious combat vehicle, we have a requirement for lethality. We have studies to look at the best way to do it, to include remote weapons systems, so it's definitely in the consideration of Marine Corps planning. We work closely with the Army on everything they do to look at things that we can spiral into our programs in every aspect. We have the Army Marine Corps board that works at every level to make sure we're sharing what works between the two services. So we certainly have a strong look at lethality, particularly for the amphibious combat vehicle and remote weapons stations. We do not have a decision yet on it, though, sir.
Okay. It won't be on the amphibious vehicle. It's on the JLTV. It will be on Stryker and those types. So it's the land-based systems
Yes, sir.
More so than underwater. And this is an issue that I'm still trying to grasp. And the reason I bring up the CROWS is that because of the IED issues that we have, it certainly, and snipers, it certainly helps in the safety of our men and women. But one of the issues that I'm still trying to grasp, and I can't really get a hold on, is, you know, we're in a budgetary scenario now where everyone's looking to pinch pennies. And the move from the Humvee to the JLTV program, I'm trying to understand what the Marine Corps' plan is. As I look at your chart, and you're going from approximately 25,000 now down to 12,500 in 2014. It looks like the JLTV starts to come online 2017, 2018. And, you know, I saw in some of the reporting as well is that the recapping of the Humvee is about half the price of building new, so there's a financial benefit to this. So I just want to know, what is the Marine Corps' plan, and how is it that it's going to impact your budget, 14% of your budget being ground vehicles? What's the impact to your budget, and where are we going to see some pinch points here?
Sir, I'll start and then we'll pick it up on the acquisition side. From the requirements perspective, we have scrubbed our light combat vehicles. We started with a base of about 26,000. We've reduced that by 8,000. We've gone through and leveraged, based on the force structure review, looking at the expeditionary force and readiness. We've cast a post-OEF Marine Corps, which is not for extended campaigns ashore, but to be a crisis response force. And as we looked at the missions, and as we come from a 202,000 Marine Corps to about 186,800, we took a corresponding look at vehicles. And the first step towards efficiencies was to remove that amount of the requirement. That amounted to about 8,000 vehicles. That left about 18,600 in the light category. These are vehicles that we can't take off the fob now. The MRAP was a substitute in a high IED threat, but isn't applicable in places where we might go otherwise. So we addressed that base of 18,600. We took a small subset of that. It's about 5,500 vehicles, and these are the ones that shoot, move, and communicate forward. They have the most demanding mission profile, and these are the ones that we're looking for the JLTV. So we've looked at selective aspects of the portfolio. We're going to manage just those high-priority ones with the JLTV, and then we're going to sustain the Humvee fleet. And we'll look at a process of for the remaining bulk of the majority of the fleet, those not modernized by the JLTV, and have a reduced mission profile. We'll do a sequential modernization. We'll buy up front those in most need and the most demanding profile. Then we'll hit our amphibious combat vehicle, and then at the back end of that, and we're looking at the late 2020s, those vehicles we sustained over that period, the bulk of them, about the 13,000 that you talked about, we've been looking at modernization in the late 2020s.
I'll add that we've looked at the business case between the two programs, and I would respectfully disagree that Humvee recap would equate to about half the cost. Our best estimates of what it would take to overcome the engineering deficiencies in order to provide a durable Humvee range somewhere between $240 to $260K. So at that cost, you're bumping up against the cost of a new vehicle that would provide much more capability. We've also done some durability testing on the Humvee, and what we found is extreme engineering issues over their designed gross weight. These have led to cracks in everything from the suspension to radiator mounts to even the frame itself. And one of the inherent design features of the original Humvee as designed was to provide a torsional twisting in the frame. We lose that as we try to beef up the Humvee through rigid measures like capsules or anything like that. So my point here is that the procurement costs alone are bumping up against a new vehicle cost, yet we haven't even begun to scratch the surface on what a Humvee recap might cost us ultimately in O&S costs.
And sir, just to follow up on the requirements aspect of it, a Humvee recap does not meet the requirement that the JLTV will. We need to have a requirement for a strategic transportability, mobility, protection, and payload. And while we can get any one of those elements in a lighter vehicle, we can't get the full range of it. So a Humvee recap, which the Marine Corps is not pursuing, would not meet the requirement.
Thank you. Ms. Hartzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for your service. Just wanted to start off asking just general questions about the impact of the budget. So how are the DOD and the Department of Navy's implementation of the Budget Control Act of 2011 potentially impacting the Marine Corps acquisition and modernization programs?
We've addressed the fiscal austerity with a current program that reflects the cuts proposed by the President. And what we've done is take sequential modernization. We've carefully timed an initial buy of JLTVs, a subsequent buy of ACV, the amphibious combat vehicle, which is their #1 priority, and then we'll follow up with JLTV and modernization over a period of we're talking about 20 years. That becomes unhinged by delay for any reason. The continuing resolution, if we're not able to execute these accounts and we don't get special authorization, or we get something as severe as sequestration, what we're going to do is create a bow wave of requirements at the back end that are difficult to handle. Again, we have a small account for modernization. There's a disproportionate impact if we have to absorb something bigger than already planned. And then I think larger and more strategically, we unhinge strategy, the end, ways, and means, and there'll probably have to be a relook at the OSD level. And again, the Marine mission is to provide the insurance, be the kind of the ready force which requires an O&M expenditure, kind of keeping faith with people and having the force structure allow us to do the job, and the judicious modernization to field that force to be a force in readiness. That strategy becomes unhinged if we take a blind proportional reduction.
Absolutely. I see in the chart that you provided that we're down to 850 MRAPs now compared to 2,225 in 2009. Is that correct?
Ma'am, we have about 4,000 currently in the battlefield. We have a plan to reduce to something about 2,500. And of those are divided in two parts. We have an enduring mission for the MRAPs and the MATVs for about 1,100 or so vehicles. These are for engineers. It's for EOD, for those really at risk and can be afforded to be road bound. We have for the remaining balance, these would be things that we preserve that could be used in case we were in the unusual circumstance that we need the MATV, either a counterinsurgency or where the mobility limitations of the MATV are suitable. So we don't see it as a general purpose fleet vehicle. We see one that we have a selective group that we're able to equip a force if we had the special circumstances where the MATV is appropriate, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. As far as the warfighter, I'm always concerned about their safety, the weight of their total gear that they carry, their body armor, and just want to ask a couple of questions about that. First, regarding the vehicle, the Stryker. I know the Army's been testing an improved version of the Stryker with a double V hull for deployment to Afghanistan. I may or may not, I've seen something very similar at Fort Leonard Wood, which is in my district, and I know that's been helpful. So what is the Marine Corps doing to improve the survivability of its light armored vehicle fleet?
We're looking across the entire spectrum of technology that's available to include what the Army is doing. This will be part of the development process of some of our new amphibious vehicles. So we're looking at the entire spectrum of what's available and mature.
That's great. What about, what do you think is the reasonable weight for body armor? Can we achieve adequate protection with less weight?
Ma'am, I believe that we can. We continue to challenge industry to provide anywhere from a 10 to 20% reduction in body armor. One of the things that I do think that we've done as a Marine Corps proactively, and that is provided some options, alternatives for commanders out in the field for what type of body armor that they'd like their Marines to be wearing. So we have the improved modular tactical vest. That's about a 33-pound vest. Obviously provides more comprehensive protection, and that's about a 3-pound reduction in the modular tactical vest that we produced before that. We've also allowed commanders in the field to dictate what level of protection their Marines will wear, and that's at the lieutenant colonel level and above for their battalions. So the real choice is not between the old vest and the new vest, but it's really between this scalable approach to body armor. I've already discussed about the IMTV, or the improved modular tactical vest. That's going to be another option. There is going to be the scalable plate carrier, which is about a 21-pound solution in terms of providing protection. Obviously, it's got less material, provides the ventilation that is one of the areas where we've discovered that causes some fatigue. So we're talking about something that's about 33 pounds, or choosing to go down to, about 21 pounds.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to now turn to my good friend and ranking member, Mr. Reyes, who this afternoon was a victim of Washington traffic. which I understand may now have eclipsed Los Angeles traffic as the worst in the nation. Mr. Reyes.
Well, I can give you personal testimony that having been in L.A., this was as bad as it gets. I think part of it is the rain and the complications that it brings. So I wanted to apologize for being late and not being here for your opening statement. But I did, and Mr. Chairman, can I ask unanimous consent to enter my statement for the record? Thank you. I did read your statement last night, and I wanted you to know that when you made reference to that 10 years ago, the 2 Marine Expeditionary units of 4,400 Marines going into Afghanistan and working with the special operations forces that were there. I happened to have had the opportunity to go with one of our chairmen at the time, Chairman Hobson. We were actually in Tashkent because of discussions about the opening of the K2 facility, but we did get an opportunity to actually go and see some of those Marines and the special operation folks there, and made us all very proud the way they were working with the Northern Alliance. So I wanted you to know that. And coincidentally, last week, having been in the district and going to several Veterans Day commemorations, one of the questions that I was asked, and this was by a Marine who was we were doing a Homes for Troops, where one of the Marines, there was a home that was built specifically for him because he was a double amputee. So we were there, but one of the Marines that was there for that ceremony was asking me if we had any plans, and this all goes back to everyone talking about the budget and saving money and concerned about their retirement and all these kinds of issues. So he was asking me, he says, do we have any plans to integrate the uniforms? At one point, the Army and the Marine Corps had the same uniforms, and he said, today we have different uniforms than the Army does. Is there, this is him talking, he says, makes sense to us to save money by the Army going to the Marine uniform? And I said, okay, it makes sense to have one uniform. I'm not sure the Army would agree that it be the Marine uniform, but be that as it may, do we have any plans to do that any time in the future? Because I didn't know the answer to that, and I haven't had a chance to ask any of my colleagues here on the committee if we're even contemplating that. But I guess for 10 years now, according to him, we've had different uniforms, and they're similar but not exactly alike. And are there uniqueness or unique things to the Marine uniform versus the Army, or vice versa?
So when it comes to requirements, the Marine Corps and the Army, wherever their mission profiles converge, collaborate. And in case of the uniform, the Marine Corps has picked, as we do with the mobility for our vehicles, the places that we think are be most likely employed, and we created a uniform for that. Independently, the Army has done its own mission analysis in their areas that we converge, like the JLTV. There are other areas where the mission requirements are different. I don't know of any move to have a similar. There have been discussions, I think, outside, but the Army and the Marines both look at their requirements. And this one, they were seeing, obviously came up with different solutions. There's nothing that prohibits a singular uniform except, again, the mission profiles that we both have. In some areas they overlap, and others are distinct.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that may be something we want to either look into or consider. The other one which brought this question up, have the Marines participated in the network integration exercises with the Army?
We have we're on the second one, which is being right now. In fact, tonight I fly out there to observe both the Army and the Marines. So the first one that went off, we were in observer status. This second one, we're participating, and as we get units back from Afghanistan, have more depth, we'll participate fully. There have been discussions at the Vice Chief, Assistant Commandant Marine Corps, both saying that this is an area of collaboration. So senior leadership is fully behind it. My responsibilities are in capabilities development, and I'll be there tomorrow.
Great. Well, thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have for the moment. I yield back. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Mr. Runyon.
Thank you, Chairman, and gentlemen, thank you for your service. Just a quick question about the JLTV. Learning our lessons from what we needed from the Humvee, what we need from the MRAP, and knowing that, I know you guys aren't talking about it, but, you know, up-armoring the old Humvees to make them more sustainable and be able to push that off. Are we in the procurement process, are we putting in room to grow in the JLTV so we don't run into this situation as soon in the future?
Again, as I mentioned before, Humvee recap, and we've had a lot of experience with it. We've done a lot of experimentation and looked at that problem hard, and a vehicle in the category of 16,500 pounds or so will not give us all the characteristics to include payload. And that's one of the key distinguishing characteristics between the JLTV and any Humvee recap. So the growth path in every respect is higher with the JLTV. So as we look at making an investment for a vehicle that we're going to have for decades, growth path is one of the key considerations, and that's shown even in specific reliability. There's an O&S cost associated with that. If you're at a vehicle at the very edge of its performance characteristics, it starts losing mobility, it starts losing transportability, it starts having maintenance problems, and then you don't have the payload to get the mission done. So a key distinguishing factor between the JLTV and the reason we're going for is, in fact, payload and that growth for a vehicle that we're going to have for quite some time, sir.
Yes, and going back to MRAPs and MATVs, have you had any experience with parts and getting those and actually out in the theater?
Sir, no, we haven't. Actually, the MRAPs are being well supported. We certainly, want to thank Congress for all the help and support that they have provided us there. As you know, on the MATV side of the House, while we continue to respond to the threat, we come up with fixes that will help provide safety on the MATV side of the House. And we're currently in the middle of installing what's called the UIK, which is an improvement package that will help not only help with the overall vehicle safety, but also the passengers inside the vehicle. And we're on path to continue with those upgrades. One issue is tires for all of our tactical vehicles, and industry is performing well in this regard with the larger R2000 tires.
Going on to obviously what is going to be our largest medical issue of this combat, TBI. I know the Army has taken a program to actually, in some cases, have sensors in the helmet to predetermine that. Are you guys a part of that program and or looking into it?
In every respect, in every vehicle, and we've have ways of measuring blast, which is a key. The idea of protected mobility, both dismounted and mounted, is going to be a factor, obviously, of this war and future ones. And how you measure that, and one of the most pernicious aspects of it is the mild TBI. The aggravated severe symptoms are ones that we were first on in collaboration with the Army. It's the ones that are very difficult to detect, that sometimes have the appearance of a concussion, but have long-standing consequences. And that one area is a particular focus. So in every way, from the Commandant down, this is the issue of this war, and it's one that we're working closely with the Army, sir.
I thank you for that, because it is, I also sit on the VA committee, so it's going to be one that it's going to be a challenge, as we're still dealing with Agent Orange from the Vietnam era also. So thank you for that. Also dealing with, there's been complaints regarding the helmet pad suspension being too hard, and it's had a occasion to fall apart. It's have we looked in ways to enhance that? And I know myself, spending 14 years in the National Football League, that having uncomfortable headgear doesn't make your job any easier.
Sir, I have not personally heard of anybody coming to me and complaining about the helmet mounting system. As you know, that we have the Team Wendy suspension system in the helmets that we're currently fielding, and also that is the plan for the ECH, the Enhanced Combat Helmet. We're working closely with the Army, Natick Soldier System Center, and also with PEO Soldier to make sure that that we're not making our Marines and soldiers, for that matter, uncomfortable. And certainly agree with you that being uncomfortable can be as big a detriment as not having a safe helmet at all to begin with.
Thank you. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Now to our visiting member, Mr. Kaufman, who is one of the hardest working members of our full committee. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for your service to our country and your testimony today. I know the United States Marine Corps is trying to transition to become a lighter force. And so I wonder if you can, in respect to that statement, in what we're talking today, tell me about, drill down a little bit more in the transition of where you see us moving to, because you know that we've got a lot of heavy vehicles where the United States Marine Corps is an amphibious force. It's an expeditionary force. It's supposed to be a lighter force, and yet it's become a very heavy force. And so I wonder if you can shed some light on that.
Yes, sir. I'll start and then pass it. Tied to our mission, obviously, expeditionary force and readiness, as we come out of a protracted counterinsurgency, we've shed vehicles, as I talked about before, even just in numbers, as we look to be lighter. The Commandant has cast us, and it was confirmed by SecDef that we're the middleweight force. What that means in part is that we're strategically transportable. We can get there. We're optimized for one of the scarcest and dearest assets we have in terms of strategic mobility, whether it be amphibious shipping, pre-positioning, or airlift. So light is in some ways a matter of degree, much lighter, obviously, than the Army, heavier than SOF in terms of being scalable. And then we have a range of missions we have to accomplish, from theater security cooperation, crisis response, already to a major, at least initial entry force for an MCO. So our gear has to be able to span that range. And obviously with the fiscal constraints in terms of how we transition is also a factor. It's one the Commandant has charged us with. It could be as small as a counter-sniper device on a helmet that weighs 4 ounces. The Commandant's asking how much does it weigh. So we've made weight and strategic mobility a key performance parameter in the systems that we have. And we're looking at, from the individual to the squad to the entire MAGTF, reducing it. And there are a number of initiatives, from R&D to acquisitions to just getting to a smaller profile in terms of number of vehicles that are part of that. So it's a wide-ranging campaign, and I know my partners here have some more on that, sir.
Well, here's maybe you could drill down on this, and that is, let's assume at some point we're out of Afghanistan. Let's draw the scenario that we're no longer in Afghanistan, no longer in Iraq.
Sir.
And so the Marine Corps is not then engaged in an active counterinsurgency war. So what do you do with all these MRAPs?
Yes, sir.
In terms of where do they organizationally fit in as far as the table of equipment goes?
Yes, sir. We're under extensive review, and the MRAP is a perfect example. We do core missions that every Marine unit is equipped with as a force in readiness, and they're theirs that are kind of core plus. They're above their standard mission set. The MRAP fits a category above the standard mission set. So we can reduce from a combination of MATVs and MRAPs about 4,000 to a range somewhere between 1,500 to about 2,500. Those are kept and preserved. There'll be a limited amount for training. And then if we get into the circumstances where they're required, that smaller equipment set, and we shed the burden of carrying a much larger force for a protracted counterinsurgency, is available.
So they're not going to be, obviously, let's say we're no longer, we go back to the Marine Corps prior to 9/11, more or less. I mean, we've obviously learned some things. We changed from that. So they're not going to be organic to an infantry battalion. They're not going to be. Is there anybody that they would be organic to?
Few. EOD, engineers, EOD. A small category of those numbers. The other important point is our mission set, without is we focus on mobility, not just strategic, but also operational and tactical. So our vehicles have a weight limit, and we put a high premium on giving options to the commander. He can cover a lot of uncertain ground. He's not channelized to roads like the MRAP is. So part of being that light middleweight force is making sure we build in our vehicles and in our Marines the ability to be mobile, and that's reflected in the entire equipment set. JLTV rather than MRAP, our amphibious combat vehicle, the premiums on keeping a low weight and keeping it survivable, but also mobility gives you a survivability because you have many more choices for a commander, and the enemy can't predict where you're going to be.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Wilson, do you have questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to thank our witnesses for being here today. I am very grateful and honored to represent Parris Island. And my experiences there, Marine Corps Air Station, Beaufort, the Naval Hospital in Beaufort, it's just inspiring. Just last month, Chairman Jeff Miller of the Veterans Affairs Committee was one of the reviewing officials for graduation. And it just is such a awesome and wonderful reminder of the opportunity that young people have to serve who are serving in the Marine Corps. So thank you for your service. And General Kelly, you've stated your support for the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle, JLTV, program. I understand that there are some manufacturers who could provide vehicles in the same rapid timeline as the Mine-Resistant Ambush Protected Vehicle, MRAP. The current engineering and manufacturing development phase for the JLTV was scheduled to take 34 months. Would the Department consider revising the JLTV acquisition strategy to move into production more quickly along the lines of the MRAP?
Sir, I'll take that. The JLTV actually falls under my portfolio. I'll address it in this manner. Our best estimate right now is that the EMD phase will take approximately 33 months. I'm going to steal one of those months away from you. In addition to that, we're never satisfied with either cost or schedule. We're always looking for ways to drive those down. We had a meeting just this morning with the Commandant, and I can tell you with respect to requirements, we've done all we can, and General Donahue can elaborate on that, but we've done all we can early in the development effort in terms of cost-informed trades. So the requirements, there's no gold plating. The General expound on that, but we are where we are with requirements. So about all that remains to focus on in terms of trying to reduce cost and schedule is schedule itself. So we would consider the potential for trading schedule for cost or vice versa. But we plan on continuing to look at ways within the department to do that. There's risk in terms of industry side. We want to keep the competition field as broad as possible because that benefits not only the government in terms of keeping the unit price down, but also has benefits for the industrial base. So we want to keep the competitive field as broad as possible. So there are potential risks to schedule if we compress that time frame too much in terms of keeping the large competitive field. So where we're really focusing our attention is inside the building and what we can do in terms of documentation requirements, oversight requirements, testing, et cetera. So that's where our primary focus is right now to see if we can free up additional schedule.
So just to pick up on that, there's a narrow window where the Marine Corps can afford to buy the JLTV as we sequentially modernize and face the ACV. We have a very aggressive schedule that starts in December with a proposal for an RFP. So any delay, whether it's a continuing resolution and we don't get special authorization or any other kind of actions, will kind of unhinge the strategy. So time for the Marine Corps and schedule is an imperative in every respect, sir. And
General O'Donoghue, you have very interesting challenges as you're looking at different issues. One that is ahead is in regard to possibly the Marine Corps participating in the Army's new infantry carbine program. Will you participate or not?
Sir, we've looked hard at our infantry weapons, and there are several aspects of it. How do you train the Marine? What ammunition do you use? And the weapon itself. We even considered our new IAR, the automatic weapon that replaces SAW, with more precision and less weight. We believe the most cost-effective means of meeting our profile right now is product improvement to the M16A4. We have a different mission profile. We're dismounted. We've got infantry. There's caseless ammunition, which is in the future, which we're doing a lot of research and development. Not ready yet. A threshold difference like that would cause us to reconsider our service rifle. Right now, the most cost-effective strategy is product improvement to the M16A4, sir.
And in line with that, do the Marines plan to procure a new carbine to replace the M4 or M16? What is the Marine Corps' current and future strategy or plan for a new primary small arms weapon?
Sir, there's no replacement for the carbine. In the small arms, are you talking about the pistol, sir, or the? Do you have
Sir, I know that we have a close quarter battle pistol program that we're considering right now, and I can take that one for the record if you like, sir, to get you a little bit more detail on that. And I don't know if you're also about our infantry assault rifle. I don't know if that was the point you were trying to make there.
If you could go into that
Certainly,
also.
sir. Yeah, the infantry assault rifle, we should start. We've already fielded some in limited quantities out in Afghanistan to get our Marines user assessment. It's performing exceptionally well. We should start fielding that weapon in February of 12, so next year. And we should complete that fielding of about 4,000 plus infantry assault rifles. That should finish up in about April of 13, sir.
Thank you very much. And I also want to commend you on my visits to Parris Island to see the marksmanship training, to see the sighting. It's just so impressive, and how capable these young people are. It just warms your heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you. In my opening comments, I regretted the fact that we have not developed a new national strategy for how we will use our military in the future. About every 6 hours, we have another $1 billion deficit, which means another $1 billion in debt. We spend almost as much on our military as all the rest of the world put together. And we spend more on our military than the next 11 countries in the world combined, and 9 of those are allies of ours. The Ryan budget, which is a very tough budget, doesn't balance for 25 years. With the reality of where we are budget-wise in our country, there are obviously going to be those who will say that we will never balance the budget, that our country will go bankrupt unless there are additional cuts to defense. There's no way of knowing where this dialogue will end. What I would like you to do for the record is to assume that sequester sets in and that the Congress has the wisdom to permit you to use that money as wisely as you can, rather than across-the-board cuts the way it's now structured, so that you can develop the best possible Marine Corps with the monies that you have. This will be very useful in advising the development of a new national strategic strategy, this new national strategy, whatever the amount of money available might be. I have a few questions I need to ask that were not asked by my colleagues. Most of them were. What is the status on the Marine Personnel Carrier Program? Given the current budget environment, do you believe this program is affordable and justified?
Sir, right now, the MPC is in research and development. and it has a utility in multiple ways. It's a highly leveraged RDT&E funding that's in the fiscal year 12 budget, and it's in several respects, and I'll describe those. The first is, as we start looking at amphibious combat vehicle, and we're in the process of doing an analysis of alternatives, having a connector with a wheeled vehicle, which would be the Marine Personnel Characters, MPC, would be one of the options for it. This summer or in the early fall, we'll have a decision on that. Secondly, in our portfolio, we're looking at a mixed wheeled and tracked vehicles. We talked about earlier in the testimony the advantages of a Stryker. The survivability of wheeled vehicles is high, the mobility as well. And we're working, in fact, with a state-of-the-art technology demonstrator that proves to us that we can get a commercial off-the-shelf capability that's very effective. The other aspect, we're managing our 3 replacement programs for the EFE, the AAV SLEP, the ACV, and the MPC under one program manager, and we're using the money that's in the current budget to experiment with aspects that affect all of them. So the money is really in the category of experimentation. And then lastly, as we look at an LAV replacement, we're learning things from the RDT&E. Very highly leveraged. We're looking at fiscal year 14, a decision point. If we have survivability in ACV that makes it a common fleet vehicle, then we'll maybe shift from an 8 and 4 mix, 8 battalions of the ACV and 4 battalions of MPC, we'd be able to shift over maybe to a pure fleet. So the money we have right now doesn't reflect a program decided. It reflects a judicious investment so we can learn and leverage and inform the different areas that described, sir.
Thank you. What is the schedule for the enhanced combat helmet? When do you expect to begin fielding this helmet in Afghanistan?
Sir, I know I'm probably not supposed to do this, but thank you for asking that question. And based on a comment I made last March, the Enhanced Combat Helmet program, we had noticed some anomalies last March, if you remember when I had a chance to talk to you the last time. Today, November 16th, the Enhanced Combat Helmet is going to enter into its first article test, series number 2, and we're really looking forward to that test. This has been probably one of the best collaborative ventures that I've seen between industry, Director of Operational Test, our own Marine Corps Operational Test and Evaluation Activity, and our program manager at Marine Corps Systems Command. We think after having flushed out the test protocols rigorously this past summer that ECH is going to pass its first article test well. It will pass its full-up system-level testing immediately to follow that. There's a series of reports, as you well know, one that will have to come to the Congress, and also a Beyond LRIP report. And then we should start fielding in late spring, early summer of 12, sir.
Thank you. In your opinion, are there opportunities to improve commonality and jointness between the Army and Marine Corps across the modernization accounts? For instance, how do the Army and Marine Corps coordinate on the development and fielding of tactical wheeled vehicle solutions that address similar needs and requirements of both services?
Sir, the story of this war has been almost complete integration between Army and Marines. Both tactically, where Marine battalions have worked for Army brigades, and Army brigades have worked for Marine divisions. Likewise, actually in requirements and acquisition, we work very, very closely. We meet almost every other month, actually monthly at some level, every other month at the general officer level with the Army leadership to discuss opportunities like that. General Bo Dias is my counterpart. We meet quarterly with our full staffs to do a staff review. So in every respect, in fact, the JLTV is a shining example of where we went through some knowledge points, worked together as a service, and were able to come up with a program that meets both service needs, sir.
Sir, I would also add that on the programmatic and development side, we go to where the infrastructure exists. In fact, we have actually signed a memorandum of agreement with the Army's TARDEC, and we actually take advantage of their engineering infrastructure to work some of our joint engineering issues.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre.
Questions right now. Thank you, Mr. Bartlett.
Let me ask the other members of our subcommittee. Do you have additional comments or questions?
I just wanted to follow up on a question that my colleague from Missouri asked, and maybe get a little more detail. When she was talking about the mandated cuts of the Budget Control Act,
Thank you, though.
I think she asked how big a portion of those cuts would be made from the Marine Corps procurement accounts, but I'm not sure I heard the answer. Can you tell us, do you have that information?
Sir, I don't. I know the Commandant has talked about how we have 3 areas we could go at it, and that would assume how DOD would apply them based on strategy. Again, we've made a role as the force and readiness. O&M is obviously key to that we'd have to maintain to be ready. There's the personnel piece, keeping faith with Marines. Again, the Marine Corps has gone through a capabilities-based review. We start with the 202,000 Marine Corps. Based on strategy, based on the roles of force and readiness, we've come up with a 186,800 force. It will require, to keep faith with Marines, a judicious drawdown. We're not doing RIFs to combat veterans and those things. So the timing of it is important in terms of the degree, in terms of going after that. And then we've talked about how small the Marine Corps modernization account is on the ground side, about 0.6% of DOD. So minor impact or a minor cut has a large impact. Those things I think have to be sorted out at the OSD level in terms of prioritization rather than just a strict proportionality. If it were strictly a proportional cut, it'd be damaging to the Marine Corps, and we'd have to reevaluate the strategy in terms of how we go about doing that.
So based on that answer, at what point do you think you'll be able to tell the committee the the types of cuts that you would be forced to make if as a result of this act? Because a number of us are concerned about the not just these cuts, but any additional cuts that might be taken out of the Marine, the Army, and other budgets.
I can't speak to specific impacts to specific programs, but I can talk in general themes. In terms of government programmatics, it will obviously become extremely difficult at best or near impossible at worst to launch new programs, and it will certainly be extremely difficult to keep existing programs stable in terms of funding and schedule. In fact, some of the detailed implications are stretching out both development and procurement rates to field the ultimate capability. And then there's also implications for industry, and there's a most recent example, very similar to what we're experiencing on the shipbuilding front. Now on the ground vehicle side, we're starting to see some contraction. Just recently, it was announced that General Dynamics may procure FPI. We've also seen vendors who are not normally in the ground vehicle business there now trying to partner. They may not survive in certain scenarios. Some of the specific implications of that, perhaps a part of forward pricing rate agreements that vendors must negotiate with DCAA. Part of that equation is assessing the current state of their business base, and in addition to that, another aspect of the equation is making predictions about their future business base. What this equates to the government is probably a higher forward pricing rate agreement, whether this comes to fruition or not. So we're probably already incurring risk as a result, very much like the markets. Just reaction to the perception of risk will probably drive up labor rates.
And that's very helpful because oftentimes we have to articulate those consequences, internally as we debate how we move forward, and because the reality is that it's such a huge defense budget that there are knives at every level that are looking for chunks to cut out. So that's why we ask these questions. So I appreciate that answer, and I want to associate myself with the chairman that it's important to have a national strategy, a cohesive understanding of how our military is going to move forward into as we deal with these budget shortfalls. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now we return to Mr. McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, given the constrained budget environment, what concerns do you have about the ability to maintain night vision goggle production capacity and technological capability? And specifically, what planning, review, or assessment are you undertaking to better understand these challenges so that we can sustain this critical program?
Currently, sir, we don't have any further requirements for purchasing of night vision goggles, and in our plan right now, we're really just planning for replacement in the out years.
And do you believe that strategy is going to be adequate given the demands from the theater?
Given the current demand right now, we feel that the budget is adequate, sir.
All right, with regard to vehicle protection, my understanding is there's been research being done by DOD, by the Army, and by the Marine Corps, advancing both material and non-material solutions to the constantly changing threat of IEDs. Are these various research efforts sufficiently coordinated to bring forth solutions in the most timely manner? Is there any coordination going on between these three aspects of research?
There's coordination at multiple levels, both in the S&T world, across numerous fronts, and then also in the actual later development efforts. Again, previously mentioned an MOA that we entered with the Army's TARDEC. There's a Joint Center for Ground Vehicles, and that is one of the themes that has been raised in numerous forums. So there is joint collaboration and communication on this front, but to the best of my knowledge, there's been no new alloys discovered. So, for the most part, it comes down to things like composites or specialty metals. And certainly that becomes part of the discussion in cost-informed trades in terms of the cost to provide these new technologies.
So you mentioned composite and materials and alloys. So there's not other technology that we can anticipate that's about to emerge other than looking at the lightweightness of the armor, so to speak?
I didn't mean to allude that those were the only areas. I wouldn't consider myself a subject matter expert, but I'm certain there are.
Does anybody else know or on the panel? Okay. If you could check into that and get back to us, Mr. Chairman, I would ask if he would, within the 5 business days, let us know what those other areas may be. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Another element in the discussion as to how much money we will spend in the future on defense is the recognition that our robust defense spending in the past and our willingness to protect has encouraged many of our allies to be quite parsimonious in their defense spending. So much so that in this little operation in Libya, our NATO allies ran out of missiles, bombs, and ammunition. Hopefully a new assessment of what's fair in defense spending will create a foreign sales market that may help ease the challenge we have where about every 12 hours there's another $1 billion trade deficit. When we've had a chance to review your testimony and the questions and answers, we may need to ask you additional questions for the record. We trust that you'll be available to answer those. If there are no additional comments on the part of my colleagues, I will thank you very much for your service and for being with us today, and our subcommittee now stands in adjournment.